Hi guys, my name is Chris Dhason. Welcome to my rig rundown. Well, how it all began was when I had just finished my O-levels, and my dear friend 𝗖𝗛𝗥𝗦 𝗗𝗛𝗦, who was a fantastic pianist, called me and said there's this missionary from Scotland who had come. Her name was Gillian Todd, and she was doing a play for Easter. And the student Christian movements of Ladies' College, Bishop's College, Royal and St. Thomas's were invited to take part. And he was recruited to play organ. He was only the second person in Sri Lanka I saw at that time who could play organ and play bass on the foot pedals with his feet. He was a really amazing player. And we were into the same kind of music, we were into rock. So he said it was boring for him to play alone. And he said, I'm sure you can play drums, because I was always banging on my desk and on instrument box, things like that. So I went with him and we sat and played just organ and drums, and it worked. So I told him I have another classmate, friend of mine, Brian Navar, who is also into the same music that we were into, and he played guitar. So we recruited Brian as well, and we formed a band called the Beggars Opera, and we played for this Easter play. That was the beginning. We played at what was then the new cathedral, and it was attended by the bishop and many, many dignitaries. So that was my beginning. After that, I joined a band called The Unwanted Generation and played rock music for a few years. But I couldn't make any money doing this music in Sri Lanka. So I decided if I wanted to make music my career, I had to get into commercial music. And that's when I joined the commercial music industry in Sri Lanka, and I started playing with bands like the 20th Century. I backed Dalreen and played for a few bands before. In 1983, Manilal, Stuart Mayo, 𝗖𝗛𝗥𝗦 𝗗𝗛𝗦 and we formed 𝗖𝗛𝗥𝗦, which became a huge success in Sri Lanka. And then I left to Europe. And I was in Europe for nearly 14 years, traveling all over Western Europe, playing music with various bands, from African bands to, I played with a band called the Leons. I played with Sri Lankan bands, including Fame and Purple Rain. I played with a Dutch band called Escape. So there was a lot of bands. I played with German bands. It was a wonderful experience. And I came back in 1999, and in 2000, my friend 𝗖𝗛𝗥𝗦 𝗗𝗛𝗦 and we formed 𝗲𝗚fire together, and that took off really well. It caught on like wildfire, and we were together for a long time before I decided that I need to do something different, something of my own, music that I had not been playing before. I love funk, blues, R&B, soul, and that's why I formed Mintaka. My very first influence was my cousin Mohan Sabaratnam, who was a fabulous drummer, and he played for bands like the Fireflies, Beetroots, and later on the Spitfires. And he inspired me to play drums. I am self-taught, but I have been influenced by many other fantastic drummers in Sri Lanka, like Mohan, Hassan Musafir, Aruna Siriwardana, just to name a few. So I learned by watching them. Though I am self-taught, I have to credit them for a lot of things that I learned. And of course, then moment I was exposed to international drummers like Billy Cobham and Steve Gadd, my life virtually changed, how I approach my instrument changed. So those were my influences, and today there are some fabulous young drummers in Sri Lanka, and they continue to inspire me. These days, I'm leading my own band called Mintaka, and we are into funk, R&B, soul, blues, and but it's still a cover band, and I am into writing my own music, composing my own music, and recording it, and I hope to release an album at the end of this year. So now it's time to get down to my rig. This is my live rig. This is what I use when I play in clubs and places like that. This kit is a very special kit. It's called an 𝗖𝗛𝗥𝗦. It was made by a gentleman called 𝗖𝗛𝗥𝗦 from Canada. It's made of Canadian maple, and it has a really small bass drum. It has an 18-inch bass drum, but it has a lot of power and projection. I used this with my band live, Wildfire live, even for open air concerts, and it sounded great. So it's got a 18-inch bass drum, 10, 12 and 14-inch toms. At the moment I'm using this as only a 10-inch and the 14-inch toms for club gigs, small clubs. And my cymbals are, it's a assorted collection of cymbals that I have. This is a beautiful Zildjian A custom 20th anniversary ride, and the rest are all 𝗖𝗛𝗥𝗦 Evolution series. I like the darker sounding cymbals, which is why I choose these cymbals. My snare that I use generally for small club gigs is a Mapex Black Panther snare. It's 13-inch, but it's quite deep, and it has what is called a Russ Miller jingle wedge. I don't know whether you can see it on the fixed on the side here, which gives me a very good strong sound. And on my left here I have another very special drum. It's called a Brady. The Brady was made by a gentleman called Chris Brady from a wood that is indigenous only to Australia, and it's even harder than maple. It's called 𝗤𝗛𝗥𝗦, and it has a really funky sound. And if I need to get a deeper sound, I use what is called the Fat Boy, and straight away it dampens the sound. This is because it's maple, it has a lot of projection. So for live playing, I really like this setup. So this is my percussion setup. I use it mainly for recording my original music. These are Toka fiberglass. They record really well. Let me just show you. So that's the sound of the congas. So these are my percussion toys here. What I'm holding in my hand is a Brazilian cuica, and it imitates the call of the monkey. So up next is this very special chime. So this is called the thunder tube. It replicates the sound of thunder. So this is what looks like a triangle, but it's triangle with a difference. So what happens is there is liquid inside this bass, and if you keep tilting it, the pitch changes. So these are shakers as well. So they are used differently. It's more percussive, the sound of this. Also, I believe they are from Brazil. So this is the güiro. So these are all percussion instruments that I use in my recordings for my original music, because it gives so much of color to my music and makes it much more interesting. I have a palette of many different sounds that I can use. So this is a timbal or timbales, used predominantly in Cuban salsa music. So that's the kind of groove that you play during a song, and then of course the fills come in. So it's pretty loud, I can show you of that. And then of course you get the bongo bells. So this is what I used as an introduction to the song that I did with Sunil Pereira called Cricket, Cricket, Cricket. You can see it on YouTube. So that was my rig rundown. I hope you enjoyed it. And when I play live, many young musicians come and ask me for advice. And if there's one piece of advice that I can give any young musician starting out, that is to find a good teacher. There is no substitute. YouTube is not a substitute for a good teacher. So hopefully I will see you at some gig somewhere. Please do come and say hi, and I hope you enjoyed this rig rundown.